Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to the Mentoring Summit India. I'm Ashita, a program lead at Mentor Together. Did you know for every 10 young women in higher education, only about 3 may transition successfully into a job? Challenges related to education, empowerment, and employment continue to impact young girls and women at different stages of their lives, shaping their opportunities and potential for growth. In this session on unlocking potential, how mentorship transforms the lives of India's girls and women, we will explore the role of mentorship in the lives of young girls and women across different life stages. Please join me in welcoming our speakers. First, it's my pleasure to welcome Arundhati Gupta. Arundhati Gupta is the Chief Executive of Mentor Together. For her work building mentoring models and systems unique to the needs of India's young people, she's been recognized as an Ashoka Fellow and a Brookings Eketna Global Scholar. Arundhati graduated as the University Gold Medalist in Commerce and was a Commonwealth Scholar at the University of Manchester. Welcome, Arundhati. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. Darshana Joshi, founder and CEO of Vigyan Shala. She is a passionate physicist, mentor, and social entrepreneur committed to recalibrating the gender balance in STEM disciplines. She is keenly interested in designing low cost pedagogical tools to promote interdisciplinary thinking and problem solving among youth from the most marginalized communities, a winner of several excellence awards and scholarships, including the Women Transforming India Award by Niti Aayog, Government of India. Welcome, Dr. Darshana. Next, please join me in welcoming Shruti Gokuldas, who is the Director, LTS Support APAC at LinkedIn. Her diverse background spans enterprise support operations, fraud and risk operations, digital marketing, supply chain, and post sales marketing operations. In addition to her extensive professional background, she is deeply committed to fostering diversity, inclusion, and belonging with organizations. Welcome, Shruti. Next, I would like to welcome Manisha Gupta, who is the founder and CEO of Startup. Manisha was a journalist before she joined the social entrepreneurship sector. For 30 years, she has studied, chronicled, and contributed to shaping the ecosystem for social entrepreneurship in India. Manisha served as the India country representative and international director at Ashoka Innovators for the Public, where she worked for 10 years. Before launching Startup, she consulted with leading Indian and international nonprofit organizations and philanthropists. Welcome, Manisha. Over.
Thank you very much. And we are looking forward to having you join us in this session, which is often called the graveyard session because it is the lunch, post lunch session. And I'm totally delighted to see that all of you are awake. So, hurrah for that, right? Uh, right. I'm also going to, we're going to try to make this session interactive, and we're going to get all of you to engage. So I can't see several of you, but the chairs here are empty just for just to get the intimate, warm, fun conversations on mentoring going. May I request some of you and all of you to come up close, please? No fear of the first bench, please, over here. We were just saying in our group here, all of us were first benchers, not because we were the earnest students, but because of our height, right? So, folks, friends, if you can come up, don't worry, we won't make you do too much, but that would be great. Okay, so what a wonderful panel we have here, and I'm just going to wait for some of you to settle. My height is also one of the reasons why I'll stand and talk, right? Because I feel I can see you better, because I can sink in these comfortable chairs and lose sight. Okay. Okay, so we've just had a great run of sessions from the morning. We've spoken of so many aspects of mentorship, from data, research, design, IT, curriculum. What we are going to do in this session is really dig into stories. We are going to dig into the lived experience of three amazing panelists that we have here. All three of you are women leaders in your fields. All three of you are doing what you are doing because of mentoring that you received as young women mentees. And all three of you are some of the most effective and powerful mentors, women mentors, mentoring other women to succeed, right? So, how awesome is that? So, like a big round of applause for the panelists. Um, what we are going to do in this session is really dig into the question of how can mentoring become more gender responsive, right? Or should mentoring be gender responsive? Is there at all a need for us to bring a gendered lens into mentoring? And we are going to be talking about what would it take for, mentoring, what kind of mentoring do we need to really sort of move India's young girls, adolescents, women through the whole trajectory of education and the world of work to succeed, right? So, how can we make mentoring gender responsive and gender transformative? Yeah. And before I start, I have a question for all our audience here. How many of you had a mentor when you were young who was truly transformative in your life? Could you raise your hands? Um, okay. Okay, so that's about, can you just keep your hands up? All right. So about a small number, but I mean, you did. Um, and for some of you who didn't raise your hands, would you just want to share uh, would you want to talk about why there wasn't a mentor, or you didn't have a mentor who in a structured intentional mentoring, who worked with you in a structured intentional mentoring relationship, or you had people who worked with you who championed you? Okay, let me clarify my question. It's for some of you who didn't raise your hands. Do you remember folks who at specific impressionable points in your life championed you? Right, that's a good. What did you say? It didn't exist. So when you were growing up, the whole concept of mentorship, especially for women, didn't exist. Anything else? And we can maybe move mic so we can talk loudly. Yeah. Good point. So in our immediate ecosystem, we had parents, maybe peers or friends. So the idea that I could actually find a mentor to help me navigate, we didn't think about it, or they didn't exist. Any other thoughts? Huh? We had to figure it out. We were left to our own devices. Go on, get on with life, figure it out. How valid is that, right? I'll just take a few more responses. Some of our friends over there, I can see all of you. There's a beautiful line of women, and you're smiling. What happened? Everything went the way it was. Yeah. That's an excellent point. And I think, ma'am, what you have shared really sets the context to why we are doing this session very powerfully. Can someone maybe. the mic. Ma'am, can you tell us your name and tell us where you're from and what you do? Which organization are you from or?
I am Vinata. I am lecturer from Government Polytechnic for Women,
Okay.
Bangalore. I am basically from Asan district of Karnataka, and I was privileged to. I studied in a boarding school, Navodaya, Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya. I was so lucky. That itself is a mentoring concept,
Right.
which with the name it was not designated. That's it. Other than that, all the means it was not available. That's all.
Right. So thank you very much and a big round of applause for our friend here. You've really set the context so beautifully. And just on that, you heard what the audience has said, and our friend here is actually a lecturer in a government polytechnic, and she's saying that it looks like there isn't things haven't changed much, right? The mentoring system, either we are not aware of it, or it's unaffordable, or where are the mentors. So these are some of the things that we are going to discuss. But I'm just going to jump in and ask each one of you, and I'll start with you, Arundhati. It's we all know you set up Mentor together because you were mentored in a deeply powerful way when you were a young woman and a young finance professional, right? Weren't you? You were sort of in the world of finance and you had a whole lot of ideas bubbling in your head. And there was a mentor who actually spoke yesterday. And that just led to a shift in your trajectory. So, would you want to share maybe one abiding memory of, or a story of what was it about that mentoring experience that transformed just the track of life that you chose?
Sure. No, I'd say that I feel that the most abiding memory was that my mentor treated me as someone that that I wasn't, but that I could be. That ability to see and treat people as the person that you think they can become and not the person that they are. Because a lot of times when you work at the level of a person and where they are, you may be talking about in almost like a deficit mindset, right? You may speak about, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that, and actually when so this for me it was when I was in college, and yes, I was completely that student who was just obnoxiously interested in studies, right? Like, please don't tell me anything else. Like, why should I bother, right? And it was in my final year of I would say it was both the very holistic environment of my college, which made me recognize that there are so many other skills I could be building time and spending time on. And then the fact that when I met Professor Gowda, he was at that stage where he was very active about what he can do in the city, and he asked me, what can you do, and what are some things that you can take your ideas to fruition in some sense. And I think I didn't display any thinking or vision at that time, right? But he treated me as someone who had that in them. And I think that is a very sort of, it sounds so simple, but it's very transformative. Because if someone treats you as the person they think you can be and not the person you are, it's almost like holding up a mirror where you see a future version of yourself and you're like, yes, I will be that person. And so for me, when that sort of, I felt this deep desire to connect then what were skills that I had to opportunities that where I could be of greater service to my city. Once I got started on that, there was like no stopping me. And I remember what was interesting was that I was in my final year of college at that time. And after that, yes, there was a graduate placement lined up, and I took that up. And I think someone mentioned the company name. I didn't mention I will not say it, but I found that the most boring thing I was doing. And, and then I went on to masters, and I told Dr. Gowda, I'm going to start an NGO that's going to do mentorship. And he was surprised actually. He said, are you sure? Like, he didn't, is this the right time? Because you've just started your career. There isn't, do you need a bigger safety net? And I think that's the beauty of mentorship also, that your mentor doesn't know the path that they're setting you on. And it's not their responsibility to figure it out. He did not give me a missive that go become a social entrepreneur. He gave me a missive that there's a lot more you can do with your skills and abilities. And that set the ball rolling. And then I saw a vision for myself that, I knew I had to be that person. And the good thing he did as a mentor then, once he knew that I was convinced. The next question he asked, which was the right question, was that what can I do to help?
Wow.
Which is what a mentor should do, right? That's your role. It's not what the person wants to be. If assuming they know and they feel confident about you, what is your role as a mentor to make that possible?
Thanks. You've said something so powerful, and especially in the gender context. You know, for a mentor to be able to see someone and see and envision a future, and just catalyze the young girl on that path. And we all know that most of India's girls, especially if they are coming from underrepresented or missed out communities, go unseen. So the fact that you had a mentor who could see you, that's something that can be transformative. And that leads me very nicely, Darshana, to your story. You're a Udyan Shalini fellow. You met your mentor when you were an adolescent, right? You were 17 or maybe 16. You were 14. And you built the relationship with your mentor for 20 years as both of you navigated different stages in your life cycle. And what kept the chemistry going? Do you just want to share a few stories
Yeah.
that illustrate?
Thank you, Manisha, for that question. And as Arundhati rightly set the context, like, so mentors don't know what path they are setting you on. They are just helping you see what you can become. They hold that future mirror in front of you. And I was very lucky. To give the audience a bit of context, I come from a family of migrant farmers in the early 90s when the hills of Uttarakhand and the Himalayan hills in India saw agricultural output decline. Many farming families were forced to migrate from leaving their homes behind to cities like Delhi. My father came and found job as an electrician. Mother, who was a farmer back there, quite independent by her own means, but now was a homemaker in Delhi. So, like, a lot happened in that period, and we were in this small. Extremely crowded city of Delhi, and the home we carried in our hearts from the hills could never be found in Delhi. But then the city gave us an opportunity to build a life for ourselves, and a life that could help us pay it forward. So it was during my school years that I got selected. When I was in class 11, I was 14 and a half back then. So I got selected for the Udyan Shalini Fellowship. And I met my mentor there. He was one of the chief architects of the program, was because we lost him earlier this year. So he was a veteran social worker, someone who became disabled at a early age, and then championed the cause of disability in India. So very, very sensitive, well-known person who's set up many other programs within Udyan Care. So for me, initially he was at that teacher pedestal, right? So I would always see them as someone who were giving us this structured mentoring, and then an organic relationship evolved out of that structured mentoring. And I heard someone say this morning, like, a mentor knows when to stop, right? So he used to tell me this, Darshan, there will come a point in my life when I will be obsolete when as a mentor. But then I saw he never became obsolete as a person. Like, as a mentor, he graduated and he withdrew, and then from mentor we moved to being friends, and then he evolved into being a third parent in my life, and to whom we all just were so deeply attached. And for me, he showed me the mirror what I could be. Girls, when they come from first generation learning families like mine, when you go to institutions of higher education, you find yourself like, I was in Miranda House, one of the top colleges in the country, and you had girls from every top private school in the country. First week, I couldn't even speak a sentence in English in that classroom. I couldn't talk, and I rang him up, and he was like, Bolo, whatever you can speak, whether it's, and the same advice was given by one of my teacher too. And that sort of instilled the confidence, right? It is not a part of any structured curriculum, but just basic life, day-to-day things. And in just being himself, he taught me a lot of different things. And for me, over the last 20 years, from being a teacher mentor, he became a friend mentor, and then we became really good friends, where then I was setting up a Gyanshala. Despite his frailing health, he traveled across the country with us doing workshops and he was rock solid behind me. And as your mentor said, I don't know, is it too early for you to start an NGO? Same doubt he also had, but he showed confidence and he said, whatever you are choosing for yourself, I believe that you will build it to the end. And for me, like, my dreams were very limited. I was from this Himalayan community, wanted to go and study physics for the passion of it. But he said, you could do more, you could do more. And when I was coming from Delhi to Bangalore, I got selected at one of India's premier research institutions with a full scholarship. My family was like, Puri dunya, pura India, Delhi mein aate hai padhne ke liye. Why do you need to go to Bangalore? Today you are saying, I am going to Bangalore. Kal ko bologi, I want to go to US or UK. Jaane denge kya? Will we allow you? And he's like, you won't need their permission, they will come along on this path. And actually, so that whole counseling and that whole taking the whole family together happened naturally for me, as this relationship evolved. And then when I got through Cambridge, he played a huge role in that, like reviewing my SOPs, my scholarship applications. I am a last minute champion. So he sat with me doing my scholarship application for like 36 hours. He was just like editing my answers. And then I got this Shlamberje Foundation's Faculty for the Future Fellowship. And he played a big role in it. And this year when he passed, I was just looking at the notes, like how proud he was of everything that I did. And it was almost the same proud your parents demonstrate.
Right.
And I think that's the power of mentoring. So
Yeah.
thank you, Manisha, for letting me share this story. A lot of things,
No,
bits and
thank
pieces
you.
there,
It's a
but
deeply moving story, and it also tells us how a mentor, for a girl, that you were at the age 14, at your age, how it becomes important for a mentor to actually champion, the mentee. And sometimes the championing has to come when you start to kind of really advocate for your mentee to his or her or their own families, right? And that's what we were talking about in the morning, Arundhati, when you said that the first and the most critical marker of the success of a mentoring relationship is, the relationship factor, right? And so that's what happened. And Shruti, you were telling me the other day that transformative mentoring cannot be a job. It's not a day job, right? And it has to go outside the realm of your work. Yeah. And you've actually told us about how mentors and sponsors have played a very critical role in your leadership journey in the corporate world. So it'll be really helpful if you can also help us understand the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and then speak to one or two abiding memories that you have.
Yeah, happy to, Manisha. So it's actually lovely listening to you, lovely ladies here today. Um, I mean, I was especially inspired by your story, learning that you were struggling to piece sentences together and watch you sitting on stage today in front of such a large audience speaking. So it's really deeply moving. Well, for me, I've actually been in the industry for over 23 years now. And I credit a lot of my success to the role that mentors and sponsors have played. I think it started on early in my career. Maybe year 3 is when it started, right? Because you're still, I mean, I was straight out of college, joined Hewlett Packard at that point in time. It was the year 2000, so the internet era was booming, jobs were in abundance. So, I mean, it wasn't really difficult getting a job. And at that point in time, I was still in the process of trying to figure out what next, right? And there were multiple options that were available. So, I think for about 7 or 8 years, I dabbled with multiple mentors, but only found a mentor that I stuck with in my 9th year when I shifted to Yahoo, right? And that mentor has stayed on, and multiple other mentors, but that single mentor has stayed on with me for many, many years now. And I think the importance of the role that that mentor has played for me in particular is helping me identify what my strengths are. Because a lot of times, I think as women, and for me especially, so I was a huge introvert. Today, I'm a professional extrovert, turned into a little bit more of an extrovert as well. But as an introvert, there are a lot of struggles that you deal with. You don't know how to sort of interact with people. As a leader, you have to have a public presence, executive presence, on all of those things are challenges. So him trying to sort of help me identify what my true strengths are, what my potential is, throwing challenges at me, helping me sort of navigate my path was really important. But I think finding a sponsor, right? And we also speak about in our organization, we talk a lot about building your personal board of directors, right? Which is really important, and that's how sponsors come through as well. So, what my mentor really helped with is my personal goals that I have, my immediate goals. If I have challenges, like I'm dealing with a task, he will come in and he will tell me, okay, these are things that you can do. These are my experiences, how you can navigate your personal task. What a sponsor really does is helps you get to your next level, right? These are
In
people.
what way?
Yeah. So if I'm at a particular level, if I have a growth trajectory and I want to move up the ladder, then a sponsor comes in, plays a role in speaking for you in a room where you can't be in the room yourself, right? So, for example, the manager A, who is my mentor, has spoken about me in multiple other meetings. So those individuals are speaking for me in meetings, even though I'm not in those meetings. So in that vein, tomorrow when a project comes up and I raise my hand and I want to step in for it, those individuals already know me. They know my strengths. They know what my potential is, and they want to work with me because I have been spoken about without even asking for it, right? So I often say that mentors can be sponsors. Sponsors often can't be mentors, but it's truly
I
like
was
what
going to ask that question, that, is the distinction because of a certain, why yeah, what have you seen is the way that these roles have been different? Are the kinds of people who are playing these roles, is what is the difference in these?
Yeah, so normally mentors are people that you're regularly meeting with, you're engaging with them. Sponsors are probably people that uh, are people that are sitting in a larger meeting, are senior leaders, I'll say, right? Are people that are come with a level of influence in a particular organization, who see potential in the individual and want to invest in them and want to help them grow eventually.
That's really interesting because I mean, this distinction is a new. Yeah, I mean, you've just lifted the veil, at least for me, of different roles that mentors play and different roles that sponsors play. Um, I'm just going to bring one thing over here. All three of you are women leaders in your own right. All three of you were women mentees who didn't quite have a vision that on this day in 2024 you'd be sitting here talking about your leadership journey as mentors. But when we are really, and all three of you have had powerful male mentors who've been men. So my question is, when we're really talking about a gender lens to mentoring, how important, and just from your lived experience, is the gender of a mentor to making mentoring gender responsive? Like, earlier in the day we spoke about how mentors could be racially, of the same, you know could be of the same race. But I just wanted to hear from you, and I'm going to start from you, Darshana, because in Vigyan Shala you are working across 19 states, uh, connecting thousands of young women in rural and peri-urban areas in their quest for science careers. And you draw mentors from the world of science, academic, engineering, which are masculine domains. And you also said that we can get mentors from science, but not all of them have a scientific temper. Where for you, scientific temper is the gender lens. So do you just want to talk about uh, only women mentors be gender responsive?
That's a very deep and very relevant question, I would say. Prima facie, you would feel that the relatability and the connect and the openness and the ease of transition into the relationship would be easier with women, which I would say, in my own experience, is also true. Like, I was mentored by a remarkable Indian scientist early on when I was finishing my college, and she had a profound impact on me, Professor Shobna Narasimhan of JNCSR Bangalore. So I feel that the relationship I have with her was like the setting in curve for it was very fast. So, but if you look at the gender of a mentor, I would say yes, the transition can be slow, but it can be achieved to a relationship level where the, at a point where the person, if they were mentored by women or a male mentor, wouldn't make a difference. So if you have, we've spoken a lot about structured mentoring over the last 2 years, and I think these structures for bringing training, helping us get over our own implicit biases that we have, whether they are about race, gender, or caste, or anything, so bringing people to a sensitivity about the socio-cultural context, and then having enough checks and balances where people could get the right training as mentors, they could get right refreshers as mentors, and then there could be reporting mechanisms for the mentees, like if there is a challenge that they faced in a particular session. It happened in one of our sessions when you talk about the scientific temperament, right? A person who's a scientist, and he said perhaps one of the most unscientific thing in the session, and that's the power vested. Like when you are saying you are bringing mentees and mentors to the same level so that they can engage in a meaningful relationship rather than a power dynamic. So our mentees were able to come and tell us, hey, this happened, and we don't think this was appropriate of him to mention in thing. So we called in the mentor, and we are like, hey, we received such and such feedback, and it's a small group, 5 mentees, right? So it's one of them who mentioned. So it's like you gave students this much power in that relationship that they could raise their voice, and then it could be conveyed to the mentor, hey, this was not right. And to which, when then we realized that their own, it was implicit bias which they were not aware of, and then they were willing to learn. And sometimes people may not learn, they may not have the right scientific temperament or mind. They say, no, I believe this all my life and this is correct, and who are you to tell me this could have gone that way as well, right? And but them accepting and then apologizing and then the relationship continuing, it shows that if people are scientifically oriented and if they have the right temper, it can be true. But then there have been situations where they would outrightly deny it, and then that the relationship has to end, because for us, the end user, our students, our mentees, are the biggest priority, right? So with that, so I would say three things. First is having the right training, having the right
Training for mentors.
yes,
So gender responsive training
mentors,
for mentors.
and gender responsive training, helping people understand their own implicit biases and how do you overcome
Helping
them.
mentors.
Mentors, yeah, not student mentors, yeah. So and those and refreshers on them, like so that they can periodically refresh it, and then reporting mechanisms for the students to really be able to give them that power to be able to raise their voice. So I think it can help bring the
So
whole
also
context.
just a whole gender responsive design that you bring in becomes critical.
Great one, yeah. Thank you.
Shruti, in the corporate, world of IT, from Hewlett Packard to Yahoo to LinkedIn, and from our conversation, the abiding memories that you've had of mentors and sponsors have been men,
Yes.
right? So do you want to speak to, your experience on should can men be gender responsive? I mean, of course they are. It's just a provocative question.
Well, I mean, like you rightly pointed out, most of my mentors in my career have been men. I have had women to be mentors as well, but I also think it's based on my situation, right? For example, we were talking, and I'm a mother of a 14-year-old, and a lot of times when I need mentoring is at work and outside of work as well. So when I need mentoring and coaching, when I feel at wit's end, and I mean, 14-year-olds can be difficult sometimes. When I'm trying to struggle to figure out what to do, I go to my mom, right? And my mom mentors me and she coaches me, and she's sort of guiding me back into what I need to do. And yeah, she's a woman and she's doing a lot of wonderful things in helping me sort of navigate that crisis that I'm in. And um, the when I'm talking about the male gender and them being mentors and sort of helping me navigate through the crises that I've been through, I feel like a lot of what has happened is they've actually gone through a journey of learning, educating, and opening up their minds to wanting to understand the challenges from the perspective of a woman, right? I've actually been really lucky to be part of organizations where diversity, inclusion, and belonging are at the crux of every conversation that we really have. Not that we don't have our struggles. I'll give you an example. I was actually in an organization. So I've been a boomerang in 2 organizations.
Can you
Boomerang.
just explain to us what
What a
boomerang
boomerang
means?
is, I was going to. So, boomerang really means leave an organization for a few years and come back, return back to the organization. So, I was a leader in a particular organization, Yahoo. I left and I came back to the organization a few years later. As I walked back, all of the fellow managers or directors who were there in the organization were 10 men, right, who refused to accept me in that meeting room that they were in for 2 long months, right? It was really a struggle trying to earn my seat back at the table. I didn't feel like the men were trying to earn their seat back at the table as much. Um, and then there was this HR leader who was sitting in Singapore, and he actually rang up my manager who was sitting in the US and said, "Would you tell your new hire who's come? I understand she's a director, but please ask her to behave like a new hire." Right? She is a new hire. I'd like her to behave like a new hire for the next 3 months at least. So the person, the leader who he called up was my mentor, right? Sadly for that HR partner, but immediately he said, "No, she's there to do what she's asked to do, and I want her to continue doing what she's doing. You back off." Now, he played the role of my mentor and my sponsor, also because I'd worked with him for a long period of time, and he was a strong ally for women, right? He understood, he advocates for women, he advocates for women leaders, he understands the challenges that people go through. He makes an effort to learn, he makes an effort to understand what it is that we're experiencing, and because of that, his need to want to elevate women in the corporate world, it's his personal goal as well. So that sort of helps us elevate that. There's one person in the audience, Anup, who's a big advocate and a big ally in doing the same thing for multiple women within our organization. He also sort of makes this his personal agenda to want to help women in the industry and help them grow, because when we started in our organization about 5 years ago, our women to male leadership ratio was 80-20. Right? We set up a goal for ourselves that in 2 years we're going to be at the 50-50 mark. And he was one of the people that also sort of, we went at it with a vendetta, right? Said, we're going to do this. We want to be able to accomplish. And we celebrated with pride when we were able to accomplish it
Wow,
a year
wonderful.
and a half later.
So it's that kind of intentionality and that determination that you need. I'm just going to actually for a minute turn to the audience. Of course, we have Anup here, but are there other friends here in the audience who are men and who have mentored women? So Anup, you can raise your hand. Teju, yeah, all right. So for a minute, can I ask the mic to be passed on to you folks? And can you maybe, let's just hear it from the male mentors who've worked with women mentees. How do you understand gender responsive mentoring? Which is, I mean, I'm not going to unpack that further, but, just mentoring for women, you're a man, how does that work? Let me just put it as simple as that. And maybe you can just like 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes. Yeah? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. One of the important word that I've heard in every conversation is relationship, right? Like everyone stressed that word, which is relationship, and I believe let's take gender out of it, right? It's about the relationship that you build with the person that you're trying to help be successful, or you're trying to set to win. And that's how I approach my mentor, like my perspective on mentorship is, right? Like Shruti mentioned about how we ensure that diversity is equal, and like now we are at a 50-50 time. Like we were intentional about really allowing opportunities, because our vision is to create economic opportunity for the global workforce, right? So we were very intentional about extending that opportunity to returning mothers, right, who had taken a career break and who were waiting to come back into the workforce and were not able to find a break. So we were very intentional about looking for, LinkedIn has an option where you can put career break as one of your job titles. So we were intentional about, sourcing them and getting them onto the system, and really building a meaningful relationship, and then really helping them to build a career at LinkedIn. So I think that's how we have approached mentorship at LinkedIn, and that's really worked out. Like we have women really flourishing in our organization under a variety of roles, and I take a lot of pride in that.
That's wonderful. Actually, Anup, you said, let's keep the gender out. But actually, in what you said was you put gender at the center. But you didn't see it as a block or a barrier, right? So that's something that should we have maybe, yeah, yes, sir.
Hi. Actually, our mentee come from a background where they have been.
Can you share your name and the
Uh,
organization you're from?
my name is Preetham Das. I'm from Eklavya India Foundation.
Okay.
And our mentee come from a background where they have been discriminated since their childhood. I'm talking especially to the about the girls. And what we do, we treat them equally. Apart from the the men, the boys, we treat them equally, and we do provide the equal platform to them also, just to share everything, and not to be shy about anything, not to be hesitated about anything. So you can share everything, whatever the problem you face, including that your menstrual hygienic things, and apart from all, what problems you get in your education sector, education, while you are acquiring the education, and also what discrimination you have faced, already faced in your school timings, and what dragged you behind. And when we match both the things, means the girls, what were the outcome from the girls and the boys, 80% of the things they match, things
Okay.
things they match, but we tended to focus more on girls,
Right.
and we ask them to be leaders than the boys more.
Right. Okay. Ask them to be. So I think what you're saying, sir, and if we were to pull it into a design issue, is also that you have to create non-hierarchical spaces and structures. Mentoring becomes a site where everybody is treated as equal, but you're saying the boys and the girls would have been discriminated in the same way, but on the principles of equity, you then ask girls to say, you need to, we are going to push you more, your leadership journey is you're going to lead more. So there is that very clear principle, right, of non-hierarchy, of and of equity. Teju, if you can share something, and then I'll come back to the panelists.
So I think my approach has been influenced by the fact that all my mentors in my life have been women. Uh, so from my aunt and from my mother's friend, they were my intellectual mentors. And then after that, my thesis advisor was a woman. So she also, everybody were women, and my colleagues are largely women. So it becomes important that one thing that I learned from them more than anything else is to give space to listen before you kind of bring in your worldview and then say, this is how things work. Like, how do you give space to listen and actually then support the growth of an idea or a growth of an outlook that they may have, that they want to go forward? How do you just add it, nudge it? I think that has been the most important thing that I think I've learned from them, and that what I bring.
That's really central, isn't it? Which is intentional, active listening, and I think all of you have experienced that in your experience. I'm going to actually now open the discussion, and all of you have such rich and powerful experiences as mentees, and we'll also talk about how you mentor other women, as a way of giving back. But given the fact that we have friends in the audience who have not experienced mentoring, you may have lots of questions. So this is the time. Please, let's kind of get interesting questions, all
Manisha,
questions in.
can I just add one point
Yes.
to the previous conversation? I think we should hold two ideas like parallelly. One, that there is a supply demand mismatch in gender, which we are all sort of working with to make all the men. It's in all our programs, I think, right? Whether it's within a company or in a non-profits, like we have the same problem where 70% of our mentees are women and only 40% of our mentors are women, right? And it's possibly, and that's because we're reflecting the same sort of existence of women in all these other spaces, right? And so, of course, with that being the reality, what we're saying is that how can we make the men more gender transformative in their response, and training plays a very big role.
Yeah.
I think one thing which we found in our training is that this idea of the diversity wheel. There's a session that we do on the diversity wheel where we say that, you have to, as a mentor, understand the person as a composite and all the different ways that they are different from you, and respect and celebrate that.
Right.
And not sort of, I think, yes, the checking of the biases is one of the hardest things, right? Because a lot of times they're so deeply ingrained. So with the current constraints, let's see how the male mentors can be, more gender transformative. And it also is a great, it advocates for the right thing. I think we should hold that in parallel to how can we intentionally also allow for more women to be mentors.
Right.
Because if we don't solve that problem, like, I think for me, I think we heard from a bunch yesterday from some of the Echidna scholars, and Armin is here, and we both have been part of this cohort of women working um, in gender and education, largely women. Largely, the Echidna scholars themselves don't have to be women, but it's largely women, and that has been a transformative mentorship community for me. Because, and it has some of the most incredible stalwarts of women social entrepreneurs in India, including Armin, who's set up a non-profit and is persevering against all odds. It includes Urvashi Shahani, who set up the Study Hall Foundation. It includes, and I've learned so much generationally about social entrepreneurship from them, because these have been people who've been fighting the good fight for like 40 years, 50 years. And I think that it wasn't until I went into that community that I truly recognized the value of, like, mentoring that is also coming from women. So how are we going to get more women to mentor is not a problem we should stop focusing on, is
Right.
I think something I want to just add. Because
Right.
otherwise, and whether it's those non-traditional spaces, because we can't then be just looking at corporates, because they have the same problem, they haven't figured it out themselves. So I just say the two ideas should be held: the current men mentors, how can they be more gender transformative, and
And
where
how
are we
can
going to
more
find?
women
Yes.
mentors come in? Because that's a great point. Because I mean, you were talking about how your mom is your mentor, not in a structured space, but in the space of the family, right? So you've shared that, and we had friends also saying that we go to our moms, or we go to our women friends, for mentoring, also in the profession, in the personal space, right? So those are really interesting points, and we are going to come back to it as we wrap up. But if we can take questions. Yes, our friend here.
This is not sound. Hi, my name is Armin Modi.
Hi.
I'd just like to offer a suggestion for how can we include more women. So I run a small nonprofit in villages in Maharashtra and so on, but I don't want to talk about that. Actually, I'm here because the one piece that's missing in our programs for girls, promoting girls, agency promoting girls empowerment, is mentorship. And that's why I'm here, and I'm here to learn. But I just wanted to say there that I am a member of a single women's group in Pune. Either we are divorced, widowed, or single. And so many of us, we're retired, we have all this talent. Here is this wonderful pool of mentors. So, we need to maybe kind of look at finding these kinds of groups. And a lot of them, they want to do something, they don't know how to do it. And perhaps that is one opening that could be looked at in the mentoring together program. There's so many of us. I'm still not retired, but I'm single, so I'm a member of that group. And when I go back, that's what I'm hoping to do. So many of my village girls, they all, so many of our rural population have so much potential, but no access to opportunity. And mentoring would be a perfect way to bridge that gap. So Thank you for giving me.
No, thank you. That's an excellent, excellent suggestion, right? Because are we even looking for women mentors? There are networks, there are unusual networks. A large part of intentionally also creating a groundswell of women mentors would be to change the way we look for them. Where are we looking for them, right? Because with mentorship, the thing is, it's not technical expertise so much, but your lived experience itself is your expertise, which women, in networks such as yours, ma'am, that you're seeing, actually have a wealth of. So that's just a great design principle. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll take the question from our friend there, and then Darshana, you wanted to respond because she had, yeah.
It's been extremely inspiring to hear all your stories, and I have goosebumps, honestly. My name is Anjali. I work with an NGO called Bhumi, and I have been fortunate enough to mentor a few young people not too far away in age from me. I have seen some of them take the decision to, be the first women to move out of their homes, take up careers in different cities, really challenge the norms. But I've also seen a lot of people and also heard stories, a lot of women who experience very nurturing environments, great mentors, but when they go back to their home environments, the same gender norms, barriers, that it becomes very difficult for them to accept that, this is the possibility out there, but I'm having to experience the same situation. It's also because of years and years of generational conditioning that's happened for a lot of the women, especially in their home environments. Can you share from your experiences how have you navigated these kind of situations, and how have you enabled women in those situations to really continue wanting to make that impact, because sometimes their intent really dies down when you go back and you get disillusioned after a point.
What a great question. Darshana, do you want to take that?
That's a very good question, Anjali. And I will just again reflect on some of the experiences that I had or the girls in my batch at Udyan Shalini Fellowship. So um, as I said, Udyan Shalini Fellowship, Dr. Kiran Modi spoke on the opening panel yesterday, and is a fellowship program for girls coming from low-income families, and some of whom may be experiencing violence and other bits at home. But when you come together to this community, we used to have once in a quarter physical meetups where everybody would meet. And today, 20 years later, 2004 was when I got inducted into the program. This is 2024. 20 years later, some of the strongest bonds and some of the strongest cheerleaders for me in my journey have been from that community. And I think, Anjali, it makes it a large experience of who I am today. So even though you experience difficult environment at home where there may be domestic violence involved, there may be alcohol or related abuse at home, or there may be challenges related to not having enough resources, and then you have these mentors who are sitting, helping you visualize this vision of yourself in the future. I would say it goes on like a ray of hope in those dark times, right? Like, um, how do I say? Hindi mein there's a saying. It says, "Dubte ko tinke ka sahara." Like even a small leaf is
Like
strong enough for you
clutching
to.
at straws. Yeah.
Yeah, it's enough for you to swim out of it, even if when you don't believe in yourself, that the belief of your mentors actually can propel. And many of my fellow Shalini Fellowship friends, including myself, would be easiest in those situations would have been to give up and sit shut. But one thing that our mentors instilled in us was like, you have alcoholic parent at home. What can you do to change this situation? The only thing that you can do today to change your life is to invest in your education and invest in building yourself. The today's you cannot change the situation at home, but the tomorrow's you certainly can change. And families do transform, and I've seen this in my own journey. And I feel that the support and the mentoring, its impact went beyond my own individual family to my relatives whom I could then mentor. So if you bring that relatability, it helps. I'll give another example from Vigyan Shala. So we had one of India's leading paleontologists who was the first woman to go to both North and South Pole to work. come and speak with our girls. And there's this girl sitting in the audience. It's an online session, so I can show online sessions also are so powerful. So it's an online session. She's talking to about 200 girls now. There's this girl sitting in the audience who's a farmer's daughter from Vidarbha who's studying in Ferguson College, confused whether what should be her major in the second year of her BSc. She has three subject options: geology, maths, and physics, and she's confused. And she hears Dr. Benita Fertial, who's this amazing paleontologist who went to South Pole when her child was 10 months old. And this girl says later on, I didn't know until this point that women could go on expeditions. Seeing her journey, now I feel that I want to become a geologist. 4 years later, this girl is now studying at Banaras Hindu University in one of the best geology programs in the country. Went and met Dr. Benita Fertial in person. She offered her internship as well. So she's on that path. So the hope can come from anywhere, and holding on to that hope. The mentors cannot do anything to change the situation at home. They certainly cannot. All they can help in changing the orientation and the mindset of the person, helping them see beyond the limitations that they are facing. You will certainly have moments where you will dunk and go down, but then keeping that hope alive does the miracle. And that's what
Wow.
my mentor did for
Yeah.
me. So thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think the important point that you've brought in here, and Arundhati, you wanted to add, just sort of drawing from the conversations we've had. So, for mentoring to really be gender responsive, of course, you need a mentor, who sort of has the ability to see the girl, but you also need sponsors. But in addition to that, I think, the mentees also need a community. So mentoring in itself may not work in isolation, but it's also a community, right, where where that's the third wheel maybe.
Yeah, I think there were 2 points. I think Mark brought this up when he was showing his research and impact in the morning, right? Where he said that I think programs that Friends of the Children became a lot more impactful when they added an active family component, right? And I think it speaks to, I'm really happy we all remember all of those points because I think it was very tough. And we realized two things, right? Um, I think that mentoring has always been conceptualized as directed to the mentee from the mentor. We've realized that there is a missed opportunity of making this mentor a bigger advocate for the outside world, and that if they don't do that, like you said, we're sort of assuming that young people on their own will be the props to like all of this sort of challenge that they face, which can be a bit unrealistic. There is a lot of very good evidence that if you're asking young people to stand up to social norms and nobody is standing behind them saying we are all supporting you, it's very difficult to do that. You face all the sanctions of standing up for social norms as this one person who's sticking their head out. And you will have one or two people who brave it out, but the majority won't. And that is the statistics in India, right? If all of this training had worked to equip young women, we would not have the statistics we have in any of these. So I think for us, 4 years ago was when we realized that the theory of change for mentoring that we were looking at was inadequate. If we were only training mentors to be the in the traditional role of people who are in communicating to the mentee, it's not sufficient. Like, what are you doing to change some of this broader conversation, right? So I think the pathway of change from mentoring, how does mentoring change gender and social norms, is the problem to answer right now. Because I think we've solved for effective mentoring one to one. Lots of great models, right? But mentoring as an advocacy platform to actually change gender norms is a role we have to design for and give mentors. Otherwise, it's unrealistic to what we're expecting of young women to do by themselves when they go back outside of the environments. And so I think that's just a responsibility for all of us to think of more.
Right. Any other questions? So we have one, and then
So, hi, I am Jeevanya and I am a student from MCC. So, before I begin with the question, I am so grateful to be here and be part of the summit, and it's been inspiring me since yesterday. Apart from writing about the summit,
Yeah,
and
Jeevanya wrote an article about the summit in
yes,
Deccan Herald, and I
Oh,
didn't know she was a
wonderful.
student. And
okay, fine. Yeah, and my question is to you, Darshana ma'am. Since you were talking about the family and how you moved away from your family and like with all of the closest circle, so if there's anything that you would want to tell the family towards the mentorship, that is especially to women, they are very caught up with their family and into that circumstances. So, is there anything that you would tell the family that there's like this mentorship and you can trust us, something like that?
So, as a mentor, what would you say to the family of a woman mentee of yours?
Um, that's a very good question, Jivanya. So, I have this mentee of mine who did a PhD in soft condensed matter, just like me, and is now working as a quantum engineer with a Canadian government. So, when her journey began, her family was really skeptical. She was part of these workshop tours that we're doing with science engagement and this thing. And her family used to be like, "Why are you doing this? What's happening?" And they're like, "She's studying in Cambridge. You are still here. You have no clue on where you are going to go." And um, and to her parents, they were like very impatient, like leave everything, prepare for government jobs. That's where yours, like life should be. And to her parents, I did request. I said, give her some time, give her dream some time, and give her ability to flourish slightly away from you. So when she got this opportunity to be a research assistant at IIT Madras, her father was like, "Come back immediately, otherwise we'll disown you." And we were like, um, "Take it easy. Like I know it's going to be difficult. The toughest fights that we have to fight are mostly with our closest ones, with the family. Like it's not easy to negotiate your way out because you've been used to that life, that comfort, and that shielding." So it's a two-way negotiation. First, you have to negotiate with yourself, saying that I am capable of doing this. I am capable of surviving by myself and bringing that resolve inside you. And secondly, conveying it to your parents, saying that give me this chance, buy me this time, and let me show you some results. You may not be able to become a star journalist or a star scientist, say, in that stipulated time, but you will show progress towards that. And we've been talking about milestones in mentoring since yesterday. So I think convincing your parents about those milestones, or the way we've done it with our mentees, yeah, it's difficult, but it is doable. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Okay, since I don't see any other question, there was one question that I wanted to ask all of you because, when it comes to gendered mentoring from a gendered lens, mentoring is also about power. The mentor and the mentee get into relationships of power, right? And what would be, therefore, your experience or your advice to women mentees in negotiating the power dynamics? For example, Darshana, you said, when you met your mentor, he was more of a, yeah, he was there, right? And then he became a friend, and then you became equals, right? I remember in our conversation with you, Arundhati, you said, your mentor, Dr. Gowda, after a point outlived his role, because when I became a social entrepreneur, and now you say it was the bunch of women social entrepreneurs who became your community. And most importantly, Shruti, in the world of in the corporate world, right? I mean, when women are making their way up, gender becomes really a full bag of cultural biases, norms, stereotypes. So there is a lot of power, issues of power. So, what would you say to folks here or to your mentees on navigating power dynamics, with mentors, whether they are men or women? Because that's a big part of also, mentoring becoming more gendered, because anything gendered is bringing things to a place of some place of equality.
I'm happy to start. So, I'm actually going to speak to this as my role as a mentor and not as a mentee. And I'm actually currently mentoring 14 individuals, and 11 of them are actually women. And what I've actually seen when I've seen, so there are two things that I actually see when these individuals, so mentoring actually is a process that is to be enjoyed both by the mentee and the mentor. For me, when I'm mentoring somebody, I want to gain something out of that relationship as well, right? I'm learning as much as the mentee is learning from it. And what I really see in some of the relationships that don't last, and the relationships that I personally don't enjoy, is where the individual is fearful of opening up because of the title that I carry in the organization. And some of them who are probably 3 or 4 levels below me are actually having a very open, candid conversation, and that conversation takes off. And I've actually been mentoring them for over 4 or 5 years now, because they've actually dwelled into multiple challenges, not just in their professional life, also their personal life. And a lot of times, what I've also seen with women, mostly women, and I'm saying women because I mentor both men and women, but I've seen this happen more with women, is they also deal with this challenge called the imposter syndrome. Right? And for those of you that don't know what the imposter syndrome is, a little voice in your head saying you're not good enough, right? It keeps popping in every now and then. Everybody around you says you're amazing, you're incredible, but you always believe in your head that no, I'm not good enough. How did I get here? I don't deserve this position. Well, that's not true, right? And as a role as a mentor, only when they open up and when they're able to talk about all of that, the mentor can actually help you overcome that challenge. And yeah, I feel like if you remove the sort of, if the mentee comes with an open mind, is able to eliminate the process of hierarchy, then the conversation sort of blossoms from there on.
So your advice is like,
Eliminate
do away
hierarchy.
with the hierarchy, question us, challenge us, and
Yes.
that becomes meaningful for you. Darshana, I think we have.
So I'll answer this both from a mentee and mentor perspective. So my mentor, when one of the biggest mantras that he gave me was ask, don't assume. And I think that's where a lot of imposter syndrome starts addressing itself, because we assume that, oh, this is certainly going to be a no. What he or she might be thinking or how it is going. So when you put yourself out there and start asking, a lot of it starts becoming more natural and more easier. So and this particular mantra has helped me both as a mentee in terms of like making my own progress and meeting my own milestones and surpassing them by my own imagination, I would say. But then as a mentor, like when you're looking at a particular situation, like, oh, this is something happening with my mentee, what may be the reason? And you're trying to analyze. I think spending time in analyzing and then arriving at a wrong conclusion, it's much easier. You go have a normal conversation with them and say, hey, I've noticed this, and is there anything I can help you with? Is there something you want to share? If not at this particular place or time, do you want to do it at a later point? So I think creating that enabling environment for listening intentionally, which brings me to the another mantra that my mentor used to say was, hear me, listen, not the words. Like, creating that open space where I'm able to say what my heart is saying, and to be able to go beyond what I'm expressing, I think is really important. So when you create that enabling environment for your mentees to be able to speak, to be able to break that hierarchy that you're talking about and that we have experienced in our lives, both the process of mentoring as well as the outcomes supersede our expectations, and I've witnessed it. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Arundhati?
I think just very quickly, agreeing with everything, that ultimately, how can we empower mentees to know that we've been speaking about power in so many contexts, right? And it's largely assumed that you're always on the receiving end of something. So I should be grateful and someone is doing this, and and we have to equip them to say that. I think just how do we help them be more confident to say if it's not working, and something about, like you said, give the feedback, and if it's not working, then this is not the right mentor for you. Right? Like, be not all mentors are going to be great, and it's sooner you figure it out, the better. You don't have to be, and I think the realization is that, especially in all the contexts we work in, there's so much like inbuilt discrimination and other things. Like, where are mentees? I think that the epiphany I had right now in the panel was, How much are you doing work to prepare mentees for mentoring? We spoke a lot about mentor training, but I think that if we're not actively preparing mentees and helping them understand, because so much of it is very deeply ingrained that you don't have to feel like you're being doled out something and this is like, just because we're giving you this program for free, you should take everything even if this mentor is terrible, right? We have to probably front load a lot more training for mentees to feel confident in all the settings we work in.
On issues of power, on issues of navigating,
Yes.
dynamics, on asking.
Correct. And possibly facilitate maybe a few initial sessions to observe what's happening. Our mentoring curriculum has this session, has this phase called level, which is about power imbalances. I'll tell you how it came to be. I was sitting in an adjoining room to a mentoring session that was happening 10 years ago, and I was aghast at what was happening in that mentoring session. And because it was just the mentor talking, 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 talking. And then when we went into a design session, we said, my God, if people don't realize like how much imbalance there is in mentoring. So I think that maybe programs have a responsibility to also observe and see if it's not happening correctly, what can you do to intervene? Perhaps both train the mentees more, make them realize that they are equipped and empowered to say it, and then observe to see if it's happening or not.
Right. So thank you very much. I do know that we are running out of time. Okay, so I've been told that this is the end of the session. A big round of applause once again to our absolutely amazing panelists and to the audience, because all of you, just did a great job of setting the context. Just to close, I think what we are taking away from this session is that we need many more conversations, right, to really shine a light on how gender can be at the center of mentoring, because gender, and there were so many great principles and strategies that emerged, because at the end of it all, a gender transformative mentoring does not just work for women, but it works for everybody, so that's something that we need to keep in mind. And for many of our friends here, I do hope that the stories of our wonderful panelists has inspired you to take that first step and to ask folks, to create your own board of advisors and to kind of really get on to your journey of shaping mentoring. Because I just want to close by saying that it was only this year, and I'm in my early 50s. It was only this year that I invited a coach and a mentor into my life. And the transformation I feel in terms of a lightness and joy of running the daily challenge of seeing the daily challenge of business, of navigating, is mind blowing, right? So it's never late to get a mentor. And thank you very much. And thank you. A big round of applause for Mentor Together for really putting India's first mentoring summit together. And on that note, I hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing about your beautiful stories. And pretty sure that all of us have been beautifully touched and then got inspired as well. And it was also inspiring to hear stories from our audiences as well. So I would like to invite Arundhati to hand over a memento for all the speakers as a token of appreciation.